All right. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us for Just to Listen, Reframing Our Relationship with Disability to Promote Inclusion in the Arts. I'm very happy to be with our colleagues, which we'll introduce in just a moment. This morning's session is one in a series of learning sessions developed and designed by Ingenuity's Learning and Development Provider Program residents. The program is called Constellation because the residents have come together over the last several months to ideate, knowledge share, and workshop their respective learning sessions so that they can elevate key areas of their expertise, research, and experience as arts partners and arts educators and share it back with you all. In essence, creating a partner-to-partner learning network. So thank you to all of our residents for this incredible collaboration and thoughtful work, which will continue to be presented in the spring. Today's session, developed by Robby Williams, will introduce us to some different terms and our relationship to disability and how we can reframe that to include more students in our arts classrooms. My name is Ariel Frost. I'm the manager of partnerships and learning, and you can see here that I did not update this slide, but that's okay. I'm also joined here by my colleague, Courtney Synthron, who's our director of partnerships and learning at Ingenuity, and most importantly, our resident, Robby Williams, who's a teaching artist with reinventability. We'd like to acknowledge that this virtual classroom is taking place on the stolen and unceded land of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Odawa nations. Because of the Great Lakes, the land naturally became a site of travel, healing, trade, and gathering for more than a dozen other native tribes and is still home to over 100,000 tribal members in the state of Illinois that still practice their traditions and care for the land. As we begin this program, let's honor these ancestral grounds and support the resilience and strength that all Indigenous people have shown worldwide, and begin to rethink our own relationship with the land and its original peoples. Just a few important notes. If you haven't already, we invite you to update your name with your pronouns and your organization's name. You can do that by hovering over your image icon and selecting the three dots. Note that today's session will be recorded. Additionally, handouts and slides of this session will be available following the session early next week. Closed captioning is also available, and you can enable captions by adjusting the subtitle settings in the More section at the bottom of your screen. Before we get started, I'm going to just briefly outline some session norms for today's institute. We've divided the session norms into a few different categories. Under equity of voice and learning, we have take space, make space. As a participant, please be mindful of any privileged identities you may hold and help to create an environment for everyone to contribute. And then also speak from personal experience. Let's own our statements and views and not presume to be able to speak for others. Under how we show up for ourselves and each other, we have openness to learning. So that's an understanding that we're all learners in the space. Flexibility and patience. Things may not always go 100% according to plan. Sometimes technology is at play. So we thank you for your grace and flexibility. And then use the chat box mindfully. We'll be inviting you to write some things in the chat. But we also ask that you try to make your questions and comments as relevant to what we're talking about as possible. And confidentiality. Take away lessons, but not personal content. We'll sometimes knowledge share and co-share ideas and resources. But if anyone shares anything personal, we ask that you don't bring it out of the space. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it off to Robby to guide us through today's session.
All right, thank you, Ariel. Yeah, so, there's a chat. I don't see anything. I know sometimes Zoom has issues where if you can't see anything, leaving and coming back in will usually reset it. So hopefully that helps So I will start this off with a little bit of uh, first a thank you to Ingenuity, Ariel and Courtney for all of the help, guidance, and in all of this in the ideation process and putting this all together, as well as my other cohort members. Getting to meet with some of them has been a joy and a privilege. But first, what I'd like to do is introduce myself. I'm Robby Lee Williams. I am a Black Latine disabled wheelchair dancer here in the Chicagoland area. I've been dancing in my wheelchair since 2019. I was injured in 2018, and so now I dance in my wheelchair. The image you're seeing on screen right now is from a performance at Momenta last spring with our students. We mix our students and professional dancers together. And it was a pretty fantastic piece put together by a friend of mine, Connor Cornelius. Before we move on, I would like to first, if you're comfortable in the chat, give me a temperature check. What's your energy level today? Give me a high, mid, low, as that'll help me adjust how bombastic and energetic I am with this. As my to give a little bit of a frame of reference, I taught a class earlier today. My students were all low energy, so I brought it down a little bit so that they could receive what they needed. I see a flat line in the chat. All right, so we got some mid, got some high, got some low. It's a bit, yeah. So okay, so since we're at different levels, I'll try to keep it a little bit mid for this session, so as to not overload you and also not give you less than what you need. So we're going to start with just a quick breathing exercise. Go ahead and find where you're comfortable in your seat. Close your eyes, put your head forward for just a moment, and I just want you to breathe in and out like you're normally doing. Like as you're already breathing, go ahead and start breathing in and out and kind of feel. Are you breathing in your chest today? Are you breathing into your back today? Are you breathing into your stomach today? Are you breathing down into your core today? Just notice how it's going. Give yourself a couple seconds. Feel it out. Don't try to change it. Just be aware of it. And notice how that makes you sit in your chair. I also invite you throughout this session, if you need to get up, if you need to move around, if you need a fidget, you're welcome to. There's no judgment there. We all have different sensory needs in order to take in information or to listen. So I welcome you to that. So on the next slide, we'll go ahead and start talking about our approach today. So in order to start, I want to start with a language note. We're going to be starting with two different approaches. One of them is the documentary Crip Camp. It's a documentary on Netflix on Camp Gen Ed, which was a summer camp for disabled teenagers. And it talks about kind of their experiences as well as the incredible people that came out of it, that created and pushed forward the disability civil rights movement that is still going on today. On the other side, this is a picture from one of our classes from a couple of years ago. This is my own personal blunders, lessons I've had to learn, successes, and the ongoing journey in being able to embrace the disability communities that we have around us since acquiring my own disability. And a term for that term, acquired disability, is exactly what it sounds like. I was not born with my disability. I became disabled, and that is how I acquired it. So one last language note before we move on. In reference to the title of Crip Camp, Crip is a term that you'll hear in various disability communities. It is short for cripple. We don't use that term. We don't use cripple as a term for us. So as language has evolved, as language has changed, kind of let that one fall out of your vocabulary. You will hear CRIP though in reference to things like CRIP tech, which is tech created by and for disabled people. Just an example there. So moving on, we'll have a couple of terms as part of a shared vocabulary. When I'm talking about people, I will try to use the terms disabled and non-disabled. And this is because overwhelmingly, people will become disabled. Many people will become disabled throughout their lifetime as they age, as they take on illnesses, things of that sort. As we all know, learning terminology is always, and I use the hardest air quotes here, fun part of any talk. And with the ever constant change of language, it's hard to keep up, and that's a thing that is big to admit. And disabled and non-disabled is something I still fumble with myself today. And as some of you already are aware of, we used to use the term handicap. It still pops up in some of our official documents. The well-meaning misstep that was handicapable. Just don't with that one. Just trust me. The movement to bring forth person first language, such as people with disabilities, that is still commonplace and good to use today. But a lot of us in the communities are using the term disabled on purpose. It's not a dirty word. It's not something to be ashamed of. And so we use that term to describe ourselves. As always, we're not a monolith though. So as you meet disabled people, ask them how they would like to be referred to. For the other two terms, when talking about dancers, in general, I'll use seated dancers or standing dancers. And this is because this is just to group movement levels. A standing dancer usually is going to be on a higher level visually than a seated dancer. And these general terms are, they encapsulate a lot of different types of bodies. A seated dancer could be a non-disabled dancer who's just seated. It could be a wheelchair dancer like me. It could be a dancer with that has to use prosthetics to walk. It could be anything. And a standing dancer could be a dancer on crutches. Could be a dancer with a walker who wants to dance with their walker. There's a lot of different body types that fit these, but these are the terms I try to use pretty regularly. So the objectives today, number one is to be able to analyze and assess the power of language used in a unified dance setting. Two, we want to be able to effectively empathize with and invite able-bodied, I forgot to update that, I apologize, it should be non-disabled and disabled students to explore movement together. Number three, we want to assess, locate, and employ accessibility services based on a student's needs. And four, explore, identify, and create inclusivity in student performances. So, whoop. All right. So this is, on this slide is a couple of different like little badges that I created to help keep us in context as we move throughout this session. So I'm going to break, and they coincide with the four different parts of this session of how it's going to flow. I'm going to break it down into four parts. First, to give a little context on the world that we're living in and how we've gotten to where we are today. We're going to go through a little bit of history. Next, after that, we'll talk through how I assess the language that I use and the power and impact that it has. After that, we'll chat a little bit about empathy and how I incorporate that in my teaching methods to connect with my students. And finally, to wrap up everything, We'll go over a couple of the exercises that we use in some of our classes at Reinventability to create inclusive spaces for students of all abilities and all body types. So we're going to go into a couple of questions here. I want you to get ready to use the chat. Our first question: did you grow up with a disability? So I'm going to give you 15-20 seconds to answer that. I should have put together some quiz music like the Jeopardy song. All right, we got some good answers. We got a couple no's. Yes, but it was unrecognized, undiagnosed. Yes, I was born with. Yep. Acquired one. All right, cool. So, no, unless you count needing glasses. Oh, I know that person. All right, still got some answers coming in. Complicated question. Yep. All right. Yeah. So with that, we'll move on to the next question of: did you grow up with a disabled family member or friend? So this is all to get a feel for what your experience levels are with disability within your circles. All right, so it seems like we've got a lot of, a good bit of exposure to disability at least. Okay, yep, grew up in a special needs class, yeah. Yep. All right, so we'll move on to the next question then. Have you ever taught a disabled student? Or like, yeah, Ariel put in the chat, have you taught anyone with a disability? The plethora of yeses. Okay. And the final question: how many of you immediately thought of a visible disability when I asked these questions? I like the wink in one of these answers. Yep. Yeah, and this is I like this last question, especially because one of my dance partners has invisible disabilities, and when people see us dancing together, they think, "Oh, she's non-disabled, she's fine." And there's a lot of adjustments and transpositions that we do for her as well as myself. So I think it's just an important thing to ask about. Yeah, I like that. Initially I did, but when you asked about teaching, I brought in the term. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, visible as in physical or non-apparent or hidden or invisible like a chronic illness. Yeah. Yep. Neurodivergence. That's a good, really good point. Thank you. All right. So yeah, moving on. So we're going to talk a little bit about history. Enough rambling for me about all of that. So we're going to first start off with a clip from Crip Camp.
Crip in Mobile, Alabama. I saw a sign that said summer jobs, camps, New York. I didn't know anyone handicapped. I was feeling a little anxious about the kids.
I had zero experience with disabled people. I knew as many disabled people as I knew sumo wrestlers. So I'm at the front of the bus, and I was not prepared for the visual of so many disabled people at one time. and I froze. I became paralyzed with fear. Then somebody behind me pushed me because I was in the way, and that forward momentum carried me through the summer.
Cool. And so I wanted to start with that clip because I think it's an important sentiment to share when we feel unprepared, shocked, confused, or any of those emotions about approaching a situation. It's okay to admit that we don't know how to approach these situations. As will become apparent in some of these stories, I wasn't. I'm still a relatively new teaching artist, and so that's why I'm hoping that, well, for most of you, this will be review. These are things that you've probably already put into your practices, but hopefully you'll learn something new from one of my mistakes, successes, things like that. Yeah, and so let's, yeah, apologies, my brain skipped a beat. So I call this next section Summer Camp, Summer Reading. Before we begin everything, we're going to go through a little bit of history trivia to give a little bit of context about how recent a lot of these things are. So for our first question, the Americans with Disabilities Act defines a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. A record of such an impairment or being regarded as having such an impairment. So with that in mind, what percentage of adults have a disability? We're going to put some answers on the screen. Is it A, 10%, B, 17%, C, 26%, or D, 32%? And for clearer context, this is going to be, this is in the US for this particular question. So you'll get, I think you'll get a poll. Mine popped up. All right. So the answer as of the time these numbers were taken was, there we go. It was B. As roughly 1 in 4 adults in the US have a disability. Expanded to a global scale, it's about 16% of adults. But there was a good point that was made in the chat, especially after COVID. We're going to see these numbers get higher. It's almost guaranteed. So that's 1 in 4 adults, 2 in 5 if they're 65 or older. So with that in mind, this next question, this is a fun one. In 1881, Chicago passed the Ugly Laws. These were laws that came about to remove lazy, poor, infirmed peoples from society and barred them from public spaces. So as a fun question here, when were these laws repealed? Is it A, 1895, B, 1918, C, 1973, or D, 1988? I'm telling you, next time I'm getting y'all trivia music for this stuff. All right. Answers in. So the final answer, it was C, 1973. It's the same year as the passing of major civil rights legislation for disabled peoples, and that'll come up a little bit later. So on our next question in this history journey. So I mentioned the ADA earlier, which was a huge step in the right direction as it prohibited discrimination of disabled people in employment and any services that that received government funding. So with that in mind, When was the ADA passed? We've got A, 1964, B, 1972, C, 1988, or D, 1990. So give y'all another 10, 15 seconds. All right. So the answer was D, 1990. The ADA was signed into law on July 26, 1990. But the other dates listed here are significant too. Just to give you some context, everyone here probably already knows 1964 was the passing of the Civil Rights Act. However, that did not include any language for protecting disabled people. In 1972, that was the year the Rehabilitation Act would be introduced and vetoed by President Nixon, but signed into law the following year. And this is where, when you're in disabled spaces, talking about disability history, or just reading, you'll hear a lot about Section 504 and the 504 sit-in, which was an extension to protect disabled people, to include us as far as any entity that received government funding. They could not discriminate. And then in 1988, there was language passed with the Fair Housing Act amendment, which included disabled peoples in housing. So a lot of information there. I have useful links at the end that have a lot of this as well. So question 4, don't worry, we only got 2 more after this. So the US, I have a typo in there, I apologize. The US recognizes and has worked with its disabled citizens since its inception, starting in 1776, with the Act to Provide for the Settlement, which helped disabled veterans of the Revolutionary War. As all civil rights, it's continued to be a struggle since then. In 1918, we passed the Smith-Sears Veterans Rehab Act, which assisted with employment opportunities for disabled veterans. And we would build on that in 1920 with the Smith-Fess Civilian Vocational Rehab Act. So how many acts and amendments have been passed since 1920 for disability rights? So we've got A, 4 or more, B, 13 or more, C, 24 or more, or D, 40 or more. Oh, I see a comment. My conditions weren't added in the ADA until 1995. Yeah, it is a it is an uphill struggle. All right. So the answer is D. There have been over 40 amendments since the Smith amendments or acts passed since the Smith-Fess Act in 1920. So everyone's technically right on this. I didn't know how to word it, but yeah. All right, so on our next second to last question here, we've got a true or false. This is to see who was listening. Disabled people were granted protections under the Civil Rights Act of '64 when it passed. If you missed this one, I won't judge you. My voice is a little monotone sometimes, so you might have missed me talking about this. This is not being graded, so I won't make fun of you in the chat if you're trying to look at each other's notes, each other's messages. All right, so the answer is false. As I mentioned earlier, the Act did not call us out as a protected class. So, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, it was later expanded on. The Fair Housing Act, when it first passed in '68, also did not include us, and wouldn't be updated until that 1988 amendment. And that's a whole score. And so if you didn't know what a score was, like when Lincoln used it in the Gettysburg Address, now you do. 20 years. I guess most of you probably already knew that anyways. It was just a little fun thing. But yeah, so there were provisions added in 88 with the amendment. But before that, we had the Section 504 passed in 73 that started kind of that wave of protections, but no one was enforcing it, which is what led to more civil rights protests and sit-ins. So the final question, and then we'll take a quick just shake it out break. So many Chicago public schools, disabled students do not get the support that they need to succeed, even in today's environment. As of 2018, officials identified over 10,000 disabled students who were harmed by a lack of policy and resources. So by 2021, how many of those students in CPS had seen some sort of compensatory assistance, something to help rectify that? Was it A, 2%, B, 9%, C, 27%, or D, 68%? It's the last poll. And while everyone's answering, I will say it is hard to get a lot of these numbers and stats. I had a good bit of help from my friend Maggie Bridger, who's a PhD candidate at UIC in disability studies. She's actually in the chat. And we have lamented over trying to find like some of these things. It is a fun ride.
I love how cynical everyone is. Literally no one.
Yep. So yeah, the answer is A. There were only 214 students, or 2%. So all of this history was to set a frame of reference and to give everyone context, which again, I think most of you are already aware of, or if you're not already part of you're already a part of the movement, in that change has been incremental, has been hard fought, and is still being done that way. So before we move on, I want you to take a quick second, go ahead and shake your shoulders out, shake your arms out, give yourself a break, because I was talking at you and asking you questions for the last couple minutes. So take that, take a second, shake it out. And we'll move on now. So a little bit about this. As I mentioned earlier, I am Black, and one of the phrases that we use a lot in our communities is standing on the shoulders of giants. You're always hearing that, no matter where you are. And so I was trying to think of like, how would you say that for someone in a wheelchair? Because obviously I'm not standing right now. It's like rolling through their paths, through their treads, following roads that have been trodden for us. I don't know. But I wanted to recognize some of the people who are mentoring me now in disability dance, who are also disabled dancers in this case. So I will never purport to be a self-made anything. So I want to go ahead and take a second to acknowledge these people. Chris Lenzo here on the right was my first wheelchair dance mentor when I joined the communities coming out of the hospital. Chris is someone who I call my brother, my friend, my teacher. He's also a 3 Arts Bodies of Work fellow, which I am as well. And a fun fact about Chris is he will get me in trouble at almost every rehearsal before I've gotten there. I will roll into rehearsal and whoever's running it will walk up to me and Chris and be like, if I have to talk to you boys at all during this rehearsal, I'm going to be so mad. And I love him to death. On the left, we have Ginger Lane. I'm sure if you're in the Chicagoland area, you've heard of her, you've met her, or you've seen something that she's done. She's truly a powerhouse, and she's been a disability rights advocate for as long as she's been disabled. She's danced with places like the American Ballet Theater, Interlochen Center for the Arts. She's done shows with Joffrey, and she worked at Access Living here in Chicago for more than 30 years. It's one of our local access groups. Absolutely incredible. She also danced with a group called Dance Detour in the 90s. And I want you to remember that name because it's an important one. And she, oh, sorry. The final little fun fact about Ginger is that she was actually in 1990 protesting for the Americans with Disabilities Act to pass. And so we've got a fun little picture with her. This is Ginger being arrested while protesting for the ADA to pass. As you can see, a wonderful smile on her face and a look of, I don't want to be here on the officer's face. What a 90s look, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I missed that. In the chat, we have scaling up on the platforms built by legends. I like that. But yeah. So 2 more people I want to recognize in the next slide. So on the right of this slide, LaDonna Friedheim Javed. She is another one of my mentors, a wheelchair dancer, my boss at Reinventability, and the person who's given me the opportunity to teach dance classes to all abilities. I really enjoy. As I said, I was teaching earlier today at ICRE, the Illinois Center for Rehab and Education, and it is absolutely fantastic. So a little about LaDonna. She is the founder of Reinventability, and truthfully was probably born dancing. She's a disability inclusion specialist with decades of dance training, and a little bit about her: a degenerative disability, some surgeries later, introduced her to people who are steeped in the disability community, and got my brain, I'm sorry, and introduced her to these worlds of disability communities that we have. LaDonna also danced with Dance Detour, which was Chicago's first, it was Mixed Abilities first. Mixed Abilities would become Dance Detour. LaDonna danced with them, and which brings me to the picture on the left, Alana Wallace. I'm hoping I get to meet her soon. Alana is now retired. She started Mixed Abilities back in the 90s, which would become Dance Detour. And as you can see in the picture right behind her, we've got Ginger and LaDonna there. And at the time when Alana was putting this together, there was no one else here that was doing that. So yeah, I'm scaling up on platforms built by legends. So moving on, we're continuing to build the community today. Here are some pictures and slides on this slide of from the different groups that I have the privilege to be a part of. The top left, the pink square is the inclusive dance workshops that are run by my friend Maggie, as I mentioned earlier, and her counterpart, Sydney Ehrlich, who's also out of UIC. It's run through Access Living. Unfolding Disability Futures is an arts collective that we're starting to garner here in Chicago to help develop art for with and for disabled artists. Over on the right side, the 2 middle pictures are from some of our performances. And then on the right, those logos we've got on the bottom, Tango 21 Dance Theater. I've been a dancer with them since before my injury. We're working on physically integrated tango technique. Just above that, Momenta Dance Company. It is a group out in Oak Park that I dance with and am on the board for, that focuses and works on physically integrated pieces with professionals and students. And then top right is Reinventability. That is the organization that I am a teaching artist with under LaDonna, and the reason I'm here today. So we're going to take one more second as we prepare to go into the first section. So with all of that said, with the history, some of the people who have lifted me up to where I am today, we're going to go a little bit into some of the techniques that I use. Again, I don't want this to come off as me telling you what to do, trying to give you some magic pill technique. What this is we're going to talk through the techniques that I use, and if you can get something from it, great. That's my hope, is that you'll be able to get something from it. So the first step of that is assess. So with assess, I break it down into 3 parts. When I'm working through a class, when I'm preparing for a class, and post-class, I try to do these things. I break it down into 3 parts: acknowledge, analyze, and address. And we'll build on those as we go through the next few slides. But this first slide that is coming up is another clip from Crip Camp. I want to share two clips with you.
To try to do some different kinds of things. When the camp started back in the 50s, it was the traditional kind of camp program. As it evolved during the 60s and into the 70s, what we tried to do was provide the kind of environment where teenagers could be teenagers without all the stereotypes and the labels. And that was a byproduct of the times, of social experimentation. We realized the problem did not exist with people with disabilities. The problem existed with people that didn't have disabilities. It was our problem. So it was important for us to change.
So with those 2 things, as I mentioned earlier, my disability was acquired. So the first thing I had to do, as I think anyone has to do when you need to unlearn things, is acknowledge. So in my case, my acknowledgement is I may be unaware of behaviors and language that perpetuate ableist ideas, but I will work to reflect, identify, and correct them as they come to light. So I have to set my own ego aside and understand that I'm not the focus, that this is not about me, the problem is not with people external, it is internal, and I need to unlearn that. So we're going to share a couple of stories about that. I've got 2 more clips coming up, and then we'll get into it.
So one day I was going to the candy store with a group of friends. My friend was pushing my wheelchair, and we went around the block, and this kids came over. This one boy said, "Are you sick?" And I was really taken aback. And I recall that I meekishly said, "No, I'm not sick." But I remember I wanted to cry. I get that feeling a lot, even as an adult. I'm kind of in between being shocked by the question, maybe being angry by it, but having to center myself. It was an awakening that people saw me not as
All right, and then our next clip.
I didn't even know there was a national movement, and I didn't know what a 504 was. I was a girl from Texas when I was 22. just right out of college. I was on my way home one day, and a truck ran me off the road, and so I became a paraplegic. I had all the assumptions and prejudices that people have about people with disabilities and about disabilities, and suddenly I was one.
All right. So one of the things I had mentioned earlier about using the term disabled and non-disabled, and as you see, I made a mistake in one of my slides, and I still had my old language of able-bodied. So before we go into this, as we saw with Holland DeLille, she became disabled through an automobile accident. For me, it was a gunshot wound. For example, my grandfather, it's just old age. So anyone could become disabled at any point. So I think it's good to start learning a little bit about the language of the communities now. And so that's where we're going to start diving into. So this is the second point of assess. It's analyze. Where first we want to talk about intent versus impact. I want to, with the language that's on the slide, I want to talk a little bit about that clip with Judy Human, where the child, when she was a child, another child asked her if she was sick. So, are you sick? Now, without any other information about that kid, I'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt, because kids are curious. Kids want to know things. And I want to posit that their intent was to ask, why do you use a wheelchair? When they asked, are you sick? But what Judy heard was, you must be sick if you're in a wheelchair. Like that impact maybe didn't line up with the intent of the question. And this is a lesson that I've learned the hard way in coming into being a disabled dancer, disabled artist, disabled human. Like, I am a dancer, I'm a wheelchair dancer, I'm a disabled dancer, but I have to remember that my disability was acquired, and so there's a lot of systemic ableism that is still deep rooted, that needs to be worked through. And so I want to share a story on the next slide about that. But first, we'll start it with a video. Who is cutting onions? Yeah. So one of the reasons I wanted to share that, I wasn't involved with it, obviously. It's an acquaintance of mine. Oh, my brain just skipped a beat. Alice Shepard, at Kinetic Light. she and the other artists there are doing really cool things. One of the reasons why I wanted to share it is because it's a thing that not many people have seen. Like, when was when was the last time that you thought about a wheelchair flying through the air? Because before I'd heard about it, I hadn't. Now I know I'm going to get picked on by some of my friends and siblings who I know are in the chat. They're hiding about why I didn't use a video of myself. And to that I say, I don't like attention. And also it sets up this little bit of the story. So I had the privilege to speak. Like the video kept playing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I had the privilege to speak with Alice, who is the founder and artistic director at Kinetic Light. She, along with the other members, created that incredible show Wired. So she had a Q&A after Wired with other disabled artists in our area here that I was invited to. And I asked the question that is on the slide. Have you found new connection with your chair post Wired? Now, the intent was supposed to be, did flying help you to understand your body better? However, the impact of that was it made Alice uncomfortable and taken aback. And the reason for that is, for wheelchair users, our chairs are a part of our body and not something separate. Alice gets asked, she has shared that she is asked oftentimes by non-disabled audience members about how she is connected with her chair, because they see it as something separate. So this was a language point that I had to learn, and I had to unlearn in my speech patterns. So next, we're actually going to go into a bit of an exercise. We're going to start with an example on how I approach this. So the context of this is you're watching a disabled performer. In my case, we'll use one of my performances when dancing with Momenta. After coming off stage, after the show was over, I was told, "You are an inspiration." Now for me, that I wasn't as taken aback by it, but I know for other people who've gotten this their whole lives, 100% this could be taken bad. Yeah. Oh no, inspiration. Yeah. Yep. Oof and ouch moment. Absolutely. So we're going to go over what the intent of that was. So what the audience member was trying to say to me is, I want to express admiration for you. However, the impact of that was, I see your disability as something to overcome. And before we get to address, I want to say the injustice and the tragedy is not the fact that I have a disability. It's not the fact that any of us have that disability. The injustice is that we're in a world that is hostile to those disabilities, that there are barriers to access. And that's a point that I want to just make now, and that I'm sure most of you have already taken into the world. So how we address that is be specific in what you're inspired by. What was it about the performer that made you feel inspiration? Was it a feeling of emotion in their movements? Was it the energy that they brought to the space? Was it their command of the space? Was it how they moved with another person? Was it their presence? Being more specific forces us to think about what we're going to say before we say it. And so that's why when even going through these slides, I have like a written script of things I want to say. You'll see me pause a lot because I want to be intentional with what I say, so as to avoid this misstep. So in the next slide, what we're going to be doing is an exercise version of this. So be ready in your chats. I'm going to give you the context and then a question or statement. I want you to give me what you think the intent was. We'll reveal that. And then you'll give me what you think the impact was. We'll reveal that. And then how we can address it. So you could read it as positive. You could read it as negative. I'm interested to see what your thoughts are. And oh, apologies. I'll curve over like this every once in a while. As I mentioned, I have a spinal cord injury that I've been recovering from. And so every once in a while, I have pain that mimics sciatica, and it forces me to curl over. So I'm lifting myself right now. Okay. All right. So the context. We're teaching a new disabled person. The question or statement that I unknowingly make to this new student, or innocently enough make to this new student, is, what can you do? What do you think the impact on that student was? You can just throw it in the chat. And I'll read some of them out as they pop up. Move them to this screen so I can see. Or what is the intent of what can you do? What do you think if that intent was? Let's see. I want to make this class accessible to you. Yep. To discover this person's abilities. Yep. How can you participate in my class? I like that. To find out the student's boundaries or limits. Yep. What movement limitations do you have? Yep. How can I best reach you as an educator? Yeah, that's a really good one. What can we do together? I really like that. Yeah. Complete inclusion. Yep. Are there any limitations I should be aware of so you can be involved with accommodations as necessary? Yep. Learning how to best provide engagement. Yep. What are you comfortable with? It's really good. And yeah. Oh, learning. Yeah. Cool. So what I have written down for my intent is, I'd like to assess your movement. Yeah. So all of these are great answers. They're all targets, things that I try to do in my classes. So yeah, absolutely. So what do you think the impact was on the student though? So a couple answers in the chat. Othering, yep. Give you another. This guy assumes I can't do anything. Yeah. They may have felt limited. Yep. Makes the student feel that it is assumed they can do nothing or very little. Yep. You're limited and I'd like to know what you can't do. Yep. So yeah. So with the impact, what I have written down, I guess typed out, is, yeah, I see you as limited. Yeah. Yep. The student can't feel super incredible. Yep. And putting them on the spot. Yeah. Putting the impetus on the student to assess teaching strategies for my body. Yeah. Yep. No negativity. Yep. They're used to the narrative. Yeah. So how I addressed learning this. Oh yeah. What you got? I like that. Yeah. It's so yeah. How I address this mistake. I've only made it once before. Luckily, I learned very quickly. Was to communicate and share specifically what I'd like to assess. Again, that specificity from the example. Well, actually, when we get into the next section, I'll be able to expound on this a little bit in a, I think, a successful version of this exercise. So we've got one more exercise coming up on the next slide. Same situation, or same workflow, different situation. So meeting a new disabled person, this is one that has happened to me. The person, innocently enough, just asks, what happened to you? Not thinking about what this could do, what this could mean. They just ask, what happened to you? What do you think the intent is of that person? Nosy. Yeah, curiosity. I'm curious about your story. I have no idea what their intentions are. Honestly, that's a fair point. I want to hear a cool story. Yeah, to understand. Yeah. Being nosy, why do you need to know? Yep. Why is your body different? Yeah, curious, different. Yeah. And before we go into the, actually no, I'll revisit that at the very end of this exercise. Yeah, curiosity or othering. All right, so what I have written down for the intent is I'm curious to know more about you. Like, and this is probably because I tend to give people a lot of grace, probably more than I should, but yeah. So I think that they're curious. Now, what do you think the impact of this is? I do. I really like the being nosy. Why do you need to know? Yeah, it's the kindest version of the curiosity. That's yeah. So feeling the invasiveness of the question. Yep. Othering again. Yep. Oh, yep. Please relive your trauma. Yeah. And yep. LaDonna with hurtful. Yeah. Understanding the intent. Yeah. Making someone feel comfortable. Yeah. So what I have written down for impact is I see you as someone with something wrong. Just like with the clip with Judy Human talking about the kid asking her if she was sick. This is what this leads to. This is what this can very easily lead to. Yeah, I'm entitled to your story. That one, I've only met 2 or 3 people who are kind of like that. Luckily, fortunately, only that many. But how, with that in mind, how do you think we address this? If you were the person that accidentally said something like this, but in my case, I wrote down, just don't ask. Just don't ask. If someone wants to tell you what their disability is, the story, they'll tell you when it's comfortable. That was a thing that it feels like the most appropriate way to approach it is as you get to know a disabled person, a disabled artist, they will tell you when they're comfortable, if it's pertinent, if they feel it's pertinent, because a disability is deeply personal. Yeah, so build relationships and you'll get information. So finally, to summarize all of this with assessment, on the next slide, I've got just a reminder of all of this, is that the way that I assess my language is acknowledging that I have internalized ableist biases. I analyze the things that I say and do to the point where I will pause in the middle of a statement to think, and I will address. I'll take a second, think about the intent, the impact, and I'll change the language. One of the things that my friend Maggie and I were talking about is when you're in disabled spaces, at least here in the Chicagoland area, there is a good bit of grace and understanding that if you come in with a willingness to learn, with a willingness to be a part of these communities, these spaces, there is a good bit of grace that you're given, where we understand that you're going to make mistakes, just like we're going to make mistakes, and we will learn through them together. So if you come with that energy, then you're a part of it. All right. So next, what we're going to do is recenter. There's a lot of talking, so we're going to take. I'm actually I've put all of you in a similar structure to my dance classes. So we've done a lot of talking, a lot of learning. So take a second, find a comfortable, or as comfortable as you can get, position in your seat. We're going to work our necks. So if you have a mobility issue where you can't move your neck, even moving your eyes in these directions, we're going to work some of the muscles inside your head. Or if your neck's tight, it's a good way to find that as well. So find a position where you're comfortable, or as comfortable as you can get. Let your arms relax wherever they want to relax. You're going to take a second, and you're going to turn to your left. Breathe out while you do. Go ahead and turn to the right. You're going to breathe out as you're crossing the center, coming to the right. Going to go to the left one more time. Breathe out as you're going to the left. Breathe in as you come to center. Breathe out as you go to the right. Come back center. You're going to look up. You're going to breathe in as you look up. Breathe out as you come down. Breathe in as you go up. Breathe out as you come down. And this time we're going to exaggerate it a little bit. So as you come up and breathe in, roll your shoulders back. Like you've got a bat signal on your chest going towards the sky. As you come down, let your chest collapse. Let your hips roll back so you come into a nice little C curve. Come back up. One last thing, go ahead and shrug your shoulders. If you can't shrug your shoulders, go ahead and drop your chin. Get a little bit of stretch in your neck. And then drop them. I'm going to do this 2 more times. Bring your shoulders to your ears or your chin to your chest. Drop them. 1 more. Shoulders or chin, one or the other, or both if you feel like it. Drop them. And just gently roll it out. Okay. Cool. How's everybody's temperature so far? Oh, okay. I'll answer this question while you start to put answers in the chat. High, mid, low again. This question is, how would you best suggest to encourage someone with a disability to actually participate in the arts when they don't think they can do it? Hope it's okay to ask. Yeah. So actually, that'll be at the end. I have an example. So yeah, keep that question. Make sure that I come back to it. Because at the very end, I've got a clip from one of my former students. I got to interview her a couple days ago, and we'll talk about that. So thank you for that question. You got mid, lower mid, high. All right. So I haven't put you all to sleep yet. All right, good. So in our next section, empathize. So let me find my notes real quick. Cool. So empathy, I think, is a very good tool for connecting with students. I'm sure all of you are well versed in this. So again, we're just going to go over some of the things that I do. But before we do, we're going to start with a word cloud. So jump on this on your device. It could be your phone, iPad, tablet, your web browser here. You're going to go to this website. I'm going to put it in the chat too. See it. So I want you to put in there what you think empathy is. What do you think of when you hear the word empathy? Let me see. Let's make sure it lets us actually get to this. No, it's fine. If we're having technology issues, yeah, we can put them in the chat. Oh, I do like that. Love for everyone. Oh, there we go. All right, so it's up now. Oh yeah, attempting to feel what others are feeling and considering those feelings. Yeah. Yep, someone else's shoes, compassion, healing. Yep. Vibrations, understanding. Yep, taking a walk in someone's shoes. Oh, I think that's an important addition to that, rather than pitying them from afar. Yeah. Creating, allow, might, awareness, conditions, sense yourself. Yeah. Oh man, yeah, I'm gonna need a snapshot of this for later. I really like this word cloud. Yeah. All right. So yeah. Just a little point on all that is I've always kind of searched for the words myself as to how to be when teaching, and so empathy is kind of my natural way of being. That is my general approach. So in an attempt to make it all digestible, coherent, and meaningful, I've done the unthinkable, and that is listening to experts in the field. So before we go into more detail, we've got to know what we're diving into. Again, this is going to be a review for a lot of you. So first, we're going to start with an oversimplification of what empathy is, and that is being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. I think you all said it beautifully in the word cloud, what you're thinking about. I think those are all aspects of empathy. And so what it is. I'm using a definition from Amanda Morin, who writes for understood.org. Amanda Morin is an educator and neurodiversity consultant. And I really like the way that she's written it as a way of connecting with other people that shows you understand that they're experiencing something meaningful, even though you may not understand exactly how it feels for them. And so then how do we approach empathy? How do I approach putting it into my practice? Well, let's explore. So first, we're going to break it down as the types of empathy. So again, another listening to experts. This next bit of info is put out by the good people at verywellmind.com. I appreciate that they cite their sources in a lot of these articles. So I've included my sources at the end in useful links so that you can continue digging if you're curious about these things. But this in particular comes from an article written by Jody Clark, who is a therapist with 20 years experience in the field. And she's a mental health professional, and she breaks it down into 3 types. The first being cognitive. So cognitive empathy is the ability to understand someone else's perspective or situation. And a good example of that would be saying to someone, I'm sorry, I know you're sad, and that what you're going through is hard. You're acknowledging that to them. You may not be feeling anything from it, but you are expressing understanding. The second type is emotional empathy. It is sharing an emotional experience or experiencing emotions with another person. A good example of that would be someone's grandmother passed away and you said, I'm sorry to hear about your grandmother. I know you miss her. I'm here for you. And Dr. Clark goes on to, or sorry, not Dr. Clark, the therapist, yeah, Counselor Clark is what I have written. I apologize. Counselor Clark writes about a third type of empathy, compassionate, which is having compassion for another person and their circumstances. And a good example of that is, I'm sorry that you're going through this. Is there anything that we can do together to help? And it's, she also writes that it's a bit more detached than emotional empathy, while still having cognitive empathy be present. So we're going to do a bit of a matching exercise where I give you a statement and responses, and you'll need to tell me, get ready in the chat again, the order or what type of empathy each statement is. So here, we're using 2 stories that I've dealt with in my teaching practice. So the first one is we have a new deaf student in our dance class. So the first response, the first 3 responses, so we'll do these one at a time, but the first thing that I could say to them is, thank you for the heads up. Let me get you an interpreter or live captioner. So with that, what type of empathy does that feel like? All right, we got 1 answer so far, compassionate. Got a cognitive, we got a compassionate. Got cognitive, yep. All right, cool. So the answer, oh, here we go, helpful. We need helpful empathy. I like that. All right, so the first one is cognitive. And I'll explain why after the 2 exercises. The second one, I can't believe that I wasn't given a heads up about this. And you're saying to the student, I can't believe I wasn't given a heads up about this. There's a second part to it that I forgot to have in there. But it looks like some of you are already answering. Yep, and you've already caught on to it. Emotional, yep, insensitive. It's missing the second part, which I accidentally deleted, which was let me figure out how I can get some access for you. So that answer is emotional, which leaves for the last one, is there anything that we can do to help you participate in class? Offering options that we can see through. Yep, so that is compassionate. And so the context for this story is one of my students is deaf, not completely, mostly though. So I responded with the compassionate response because I wanted to make sure that they could get the best out of our class. So one of the things that we make a point to do is anytime that I need to talk to the student or I need to give instruction that involves the student, I get their attention first before I speak. They're pretty good at reading lips, and that partial hearing combined with that helps. I did ask them if they needed an interpreter. They said no. And so that is one of our agreements, is that if I need to give you instruction, or if we need to talk, if you need to talk to me, we get each other's attention before we start speaking, and we make sure that the other person can see. I also do slow down and try to speak clearly. And I'll tell you what this is not, at least for practical purposes, this is not slowing down your speech and talking and over enunciating like they're a baby that can't understand you. This is just taking a moment, making sure that I'm speaking clearly towards them and not doing my usual bumble through phrases as fast as I can. So yeah, and we'll revisit some of this in the next exercise. So moving on to that. With this one, we have a student that requires a power wheelchair, but they're still waiting for their powered wheelchair to come in. So they require someone else to push them around class. So our 3 responses, and I'll read through all 3 this time so you can get some context. The first response, I'm sorry, that's frustrating. I'm here to help. The second one, we're going to go through some movements for class and transpose, which means that we're adjusting movements for body types. And the third one, I'm sorry to hear, let me get someone to help move you. So we'll go with the first one. I'm sorry, that's frustrating. I'm here to help. What kind of response do you think that first one is? And again, apologize. Next time I have to do one of these, I will learn the Jeopardy theme song on my ukulele so I can play you some music while we wait. All right, so we got a lot of answers coming in. All right, so that first one is emotional. And I'll explain why once we finish this exercise, like where these, at least where my rationale is with them. The second one, we're going to go through some movements for class and transpose, which means we're going to work together to put together movements that evoke the same emotions. They might not necessarily involve the same body parts or the same movements, but we're going to work together to put this to help them participate. All right, so that one, looking at the answers in the chat, at least for me, I've labeled as compassionate. And I like seeing the differences in chat because that it shows me it's a testament to the fact that we don't all communicate exactly the same way, and that it's constantly a learning process. So talking to each other, listening, I'm getting a lot of good feedback from this, so thank you all. And so the final one, obviously, is cognitive. And so just a quick short story on this particular situation. One of my students, they don't have, where their arms usually sit when they're in their chair is a little bit behind them and behind their armrest. Sometimes they'll bring them up on top, but usually it's back there. And they're in a tall wheelchair that could not move around. So for what we would do is mindfully work in partner dancing, so that if they needed to be moved by somebody, we would make that purposefully a part of the dance. And we've actually taken a couple of classes with that partner work and figured out ways that they can have agency in their movement. When I was moving with them, they surprised me at one point where they yawned and were able to bring up their arms in this big, strong display. And I turned to him, I said, "You didn't tell me you could do that. We're going to come up with something fun for that." And we worked it into choreography. But for part of the partner work, I had them hold out their arm, and I was like, "You've got a strong chest, you've got a strong shoulders. Let's use that to create something." And so while we're spinning together in a circle, I asked, "Can I make a suggestion for something to try?" And they were like, yeah, that's fine. I was like, "All right, so how tightly we spin depends on how much you engage your shoulder and your chest. We can move together. If you're real strong, if you tighten it together, we'll move in a line. If you want to start spiraling us in, you kind of start to let that relax and come down. And where you stop is going to control our center and how we're going to move together." And some good news, they did get their power wheelchair today, actually, which made for a fun class. But we'll talk more about that later. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up empathize. So at least for me, the breakdown for compassionate responses is: 1, always acknowledging the student; 2, expressing a desire to help without centering yourself. So with the cognitive responses before, it was usually, "I see this problem, I'm going to help fix it right away," which is a thing I've had to unlearn. It still pops up every once in a while. And then 3, giving the students agency. There's a bit of a caveat to that one, where we want to give them that space to problem solve. But if they become paralyzed with the analysis of it, ask if we can give suggestions so that they still have that agency, working with the students. All right, so that's empathize. We're going to recenter one more time. So for this one, because we are, okay, so we're probably going to have to cut out the exercise at the very end. Cool. So just take a second, find where you are, shake your head out a little bit, shake your shoulders out a bit, raise your arms if you need to. Try not to run into the things around you. Go ahead. And a story about this picture before we move on. This is one of my friends on the left, Jonathan St. Clair, super in-light here in the hip hop community. He was teaching at ICRE with me a couple years back. To his right is our friend Wheels. We're trying to get him to dance more, but he's a little shy. But yeah, so in the interest of time, we're going to move on to the next Crip Camp clip.
You could do anything that you thought you wanted to try to do. You wouldn't be picked to be on a team back home. But at Jeanette, you had to go up to bat. And if you didn't hit the ball, hell, you were out.
Awesome. Yep, so on our... Ooh. One sec, sorry. All the bones are popping. Yeah, so on this slide, we've got a little bit of a breakdown. This is, again, another expert that who's already in the field, a teacher with a master's in education, Julian Cortez, who's been teaching for 20 years, wrote an article for WGU and I think a lot these points are really good for how at least I've been able to implement different these 3 specific practices into my teaching practice with reinventability. The first one, obviously, connect and create a safe environment. That's connecting with your students and giving them the permission to be and explore. 2, being explicit. This goes all the way back up to assess and empathize. We want to be able to be direct and explicit about the things that we expect. And 3, giving the kids a voice, giving students a voice. That's that agency point that keeps coming up. So on the next slide, we talk a little bit about, it's kind of like a quick checklist of access needs that you can just check off if you're going into a new space. Oh, sorry, having trouble. Ariel, could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Sorry about that. So these are just your very, very bare bones basic access needs this is your questions you can ask if you're going into a new space, if you're going to be helping out as a teaching artist going into a new facility. These are questions I know that get asked in whenever we're preparing gatherings. We use registration forms for a lot of them. Do we need live captioning? Do we need ASL interpretation? Are the facilities physically accessible? All of these, but I think the most important one is down there on the bottom right of who do I contact if. Know who you need to speak to in case of an emergency, anything like that. These are questions that should be taken care of before you get in the classroom, but yeah. So the first thing I do in every class is the invitation to be and the temperature check, which is what I did with you. I let the students know they're expected to participate, but they can check out as needed, because as we always talk about, you know your bodies better than we do. You know your current state better than we do. So in creating a safe environment, this is giving that space and permission. Being explicit, I'm letting the students know that they are expected to participate if they can. And then for the third point, I'm encouraging them to listen to themselves and speak up. It's giving them a voice. So on the next slide, we'll go into a little bit of recentering. That's what I was doing, what I've been doing this whole presentation. We start in and come back into a circle during our whole class. And I like to ask the students their thoughts on the exercises, whether that's partner dancing, solo work, giving them ideas, or asking them to come up with ideas for how to move, given a prompt. I like it because it gives them a chance to think about it, digest it, come back, and we can come up with cool ideas. And so in that regard, creating a safe environment, we're coming back to make sure everyone's okay. We're reminding our students to take a moment and check on their bodies. And then if they need a break for water, rest, we encourage them to do so each time, just as that constant positive reminder and reinforcement. Some of the students have physical therapy before and after, and yeah, I want to make sure they're okay. And so the final slide of this section is giving students control. So this can be scary, it can be fun. One of my current students is the one in the gray in this video, makes music. So we danced to his music for one of the classes, and this is one of his best friends with him. They are usually pretty self-sufficient. So we were working on an exercise they'd already gotten. And so I told them, go away. I need you to think about a spiral. I want you to come up with something. And originally, and I missed it because I didn't have my phone at the time, they had leaned back in their power wheelchairs and just started spinning in circles next to each other. And then it culminated in this video. This was the second part of it.
Sing for that too. It's so in sync with that.
Yeah, we're gonna use this for the talent show somehow.
Now is
It was 2 minutes of that, but I just wanted to share that with you. They bring me so much joy. But in giving the students control, so because I'm in dance practice, the first thing, obviously, music. Letting them pick music, screening it, making sure it's okay, but doing so. And then with the second one is giving them agency, asking them for help when coming up with transpositions for their movements. Yeah. So we'll end with a couple testimonials and then we'll go into Q&A. So, yeah. So this one.
I really love this dance course.
Party was the bomb. This dance party.
It was awesome. Like how we got to move and just to see how much you can do in a wheelchair, how much you can do with standing up, and it's like no limitations, and it was just so awesome. I had a blast doing it. I hope they come again sometime soon.
Okay. And then, yeah, just because time is of the essence, Ariel, could you go to the It's Okay slide? It's the third one of these, I think.
Started off being diagnosed. You guys are really...
This one, yeah. So the context before we start it is just, this is one of my students from last year. She went to ICRE. She's gone back to her high school to try a non-specialized high school. And yeah, I asked her a question, which will be in the video. You took away from having the movement therapy class with LaDonna and myself.
It's okay. It's okay. Probably like, Anna, what the heck are you talking about? It's okay. Again, I'll keep repeating it, but I will explain it eventually. Just give me a second. Going into movement therapy, I was like, I can't get up out of the chair and start doing backflips and somersaults and, all these fun things. It's okay. You don't, okay, for a little example, my friend's 8-year-old sister, she's in tumbling and ballet and dance and tap and all these things. She's doing all these fun backflip things that it's crazy that her body can even move like that. And I'm like, but I want to do that. And then I go back in my brain and I say, it's okay. Robby and LaDonna said it's okay. And I will tell you this. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I will tell you this from now on. I never got that before, you guys. I never looked at myself and said, you know what, it's okay. I think that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned from the two of you is that it's okay. I know that got really deep and really awkward, but like I said, it's been, since meeting the two of you, it's been really nice to be like, you know what, it's okay. It is what it is, I'm using what I have, and that's all I can do. I don't have to push my limits in order to make it something meaningful.
Yeah. So that was yeah, that's one of my students that made me cry when we were talking. But yeah. So originally we were going to do an exercise called the name game that we do in class where you go around the circle, each person creates a movement with their name, and each time you add a person, you do all of those movements and say the person's name. And the idea was going to be that we transpose it to get a little practice. But because I want you all to have a chance to ask some questions, we'll skip to the resource slide for now. So on Reinventability's website, you'll get this in the slides. We've got access to resources that you can use if you need them in your practice. Momenta, as I've mentioned before, I'm on the board for and I dance with. LaDonna is also on the board for. Everybody Can Dance is our monthly workshop. It's pay what you can of all ages, all body types, all disability types. Respectability, we've got accessibility webinars that you can use to help further continuous education. Yeah, there's a lot of things there. And then on the next slide, sorry. This is a snapshot of the accessibility services on Reinventability's website. ASL interpreters, audio describers, closed captioning, and equipment rental. They are up to date. I was given a heads up that we're good to go there. And then yeah, the next couple of slides that you'll see in the slide deck are just going to be useful links. Can we get a copy of that to save? Yes, you will get a copy of my slides. They'll be available, I think, next week, Ariel said. It's the onions. But yeah, so these links are just further reading. Some of them were things that I referenced in with the trivia, just to give you greater context. And so finally, we'll have LaDonna come off mute and give you what, like 5-10 minutes to ask us questions. Oh, there we go. LaDonna shared in the chat their website.
Hello.
All right.
Hi. So I think a really good way to do this is you all can pop some questions into the chat and I will read them, and then Robby or LaDonna can answer them as we go along.
And I want to let people know Robby's part of the iCRE program. I have also in the past taught with CPS, and I worked at CPS for a little bit. So if you just have CPS related issues or questions to share.
LaDonna has been probably everywhere in this system, so she is an incredible resource.
Go ahead, Emily. Emily says, I have a connection, but it's not a question.
Okay.
Hang on, sorry. Where am I? Here I am. Oh, yeah. Here I am. I teach comedy and improv a lot. So I've had a lot of instances come up where I'll have a student. In fact, I've had multiple instances of students with some form of dwarfism, where we have to have the conversation before class starts of, do you want to include this in your comedy? Or do you want this to be excluded from your comedy? And when your peers choose to include it in their comedy, despite being told not to, do you want to address it or do you want me to address it? And that's worked well so far, but I had to kind of learn by doing to add that second one so that my students aren't put into a position to defend themselves unless that's where they want to be, and to say, no, this is not available for being part of our comedy right now.
I absolutely love that. Thank you, Emily. Emily is another one of our artists. If you remember from the first couple slides, Emily and I are in the cohort together, and she is incredible. So yeah.
In the slides, my face is like this, so they don't look exactly the same in real life.
All right. I think we had a question from earlier. Oh no, it's so far up. I should have copied it.
If I remember correctly, it was a question about encouraging students to participate who don't think they can in art spaces.
That's, yeah. Okay.
Yes,
so
that was me, guys.
Oh, thank
Hi,
you.
it's Nadine.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes, I mean, I've actually worked with autistic students, and I found it easier to actually have the autistic students jump in and actually perform on instruments. But I've also had students that have had was it polio that wanted to play drums but didn't think that they could do it. So what would be your best advice on how to include students when they say, no, I don't think I can do that, just to be able to give them a chance to try and do that. And this has been very, very beautiful to look at, and it's very enjoyable. You did a wonderful job, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Yeah, LaDonna, do you want to answer that first, or do you want me to?
So something that I often do toward the beginning of our classes, and interspersed, is little videos. Show by example, either myself in person or videos of others, because there's so many different kinds of disabilities, and I have one. And so by including that, I want them to be able to see themselves and get the idea that more is possible than you may think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely to reinforce that. Some of my current cohort of students are wheelchair users, or powered wheelchair users that don't have, they have limited function with their limbs, with their arms and legs. And being able to show them, at least in our case, video of other dancers we have in the community who use powered wheelchairs definitely helps. And at least one thing that helped, especially today, was first getting one of my students, we moved to a song that he really liked. I caught him, it was like a month ago, listening to a song, The Sound of Silence, specifically a cover by a metal band, Disturbed. And so the first thing was using, like, that was the thing he was really focused on. And I was like, okay, cool. So do you like Disturbed? And he was like, yeah. It's like, awesome. And he was like, you know Disturbed? I was like, yeah, I know Disturbed. We're gonna, let's dance to it. And he was like, you can dance to this? I was like, you can dance to anything. And so in the last couple of weeks leading up to this, I kept reminding the students, like, we're gonna dance to the music that you like. We're gonna go, we're gonna go, we're gonna go. So when today came, he has back issues. So one of the things that discourages him generally is pain from certain movements. And so one of the first things that we did were some gentle movements. I was like, all right, let's do our warm up like we normally do. And we did that to discover, like, where some of the pain points are. And I was like, all right, we're going to turn these warm up movements into a dance. And by taking something that they already know that they can do, and just expanding it into something that they didn't think it was, that seemed to help a lot. Because we took, just like we were talking about earlier, the left, right, up, down, and we expanded on it where it's like, okay, now add a little bit of emotion into your body. And then, hey, here you can roll. And like some of the movements, I did some things with my arms and they were like, oh, that I don't think I can do that. I was like, but you can do something with your body that still evokes that emotion. So let's explore, let's play with it. And I was like, don't be discouraged. Don't let it discourage you. Just because, like, in us, we've got that inner judge that's always just like, oh, this isn't interesting, this isn't good. Yeah, and we created a dance. So I hope that helped.
I love that story. I've heard it before, but I still love hearing it. In response to Emily, your comment in the chat, this is a common problem. Teachers and aides not seeing things quite the way we do in terms of students' abilities. What I do to deal with that is I try to meet with them without kids before I start teaching. and both honor their opinions and knowledge, and then talk to them about, so I'm going to try this, and feel them out on how best I can suggest it while still honoring their experience. I don't know if that made sense, but it's really helpful. Also, we, like as an OT, I could read all the IEPs, and as an arts teacher, you don't get that information. But sometimes in the meeting, they can give just information that will help you think in advance.
I have a question that's maybe Robby and LaDonna can answer, but it's probably mostly for you, LaDonna. So I used to work at a school, and it had a common layout that I gather a lot of schools built around that time did, which is any entrance that you go into, you cannot go anywhere else in the building without first navigating some stairs. And as an arts partner who was, I was working with the school, and I have no control over what happens at the school or any of those things. How can I advocate for more accessibility options for the school? And before you answer, I do also want to let our audience know that I looked up how that was even legal. And essentially, the way that it's legal is that if there's a school within a certain radius, which I think might be 1 mile, 3 miles, I'm not exactly sure what the radius is, that is fully accessible, then that's all that needs to happen. So essentially, if a student can't access a particular building, then they're like, well, you can just go to this school that's 5 blocks away.
Yeah, we were actually just talking about that.
I would say talk to the principal, but I've been there and done that, and it never went well for me. Principals are watching the budget, and they can get very nervous if you suggest something that might cost money. They like to keep their elevators locked because they don't want to have to pay to fix it. It's really hard. I think it's the PTs and OTs, the ed sci, the people who deal directly with the students with disabilities, have connections that could assist with that. I would suggest talking to them, but really it's going downtown. To affect real change, it's getting downtown to tell people they have to and give them the money. I know that's not like a super happy answer.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say I'm not trying to like dominate the conversation. So those of you, like, if anything that we're saying sparks a question or you want to follow up, please throw that in the chat. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, or ask a little bit about what it's like being a teaching artist with a disability. And for you, LaDonna, what it's like trying to recruit teaching artists with disabilities, sending them to places that, how you're ensuring care for your teaching artists that may have to navigate spaces, and just talking a little bit about that relationship.
It is super hard because there just aren't many of us, and people have jobs and school and all these things, which I know is a problem throughout the sector, but it becomes even more of a problem with disability because transportation becomes such an issue. How do you get to the school? You're relying on, oh my God, what's it called? paratransit. Yeah, they'll get you there, sometime within this 2-hour block of time. And schools, that's not how schools operate. That's not how it works. It's a huge challenge. And that's why I've now turned my attention to maybe hoping to offer training to the artists who are already teaching in schools, and follow that up with the offer of a site visit by one of our teachers, so that you do get that representation, but not on a weekly basis.
Yeah. And yeah, to that point, like I'm lucky enough that I live close to a couple of bus lines where I can get places if I need to. There are still a lot of gaps in public transit and getting to places, and it's still a little cumbersome and time consuming to get places. Luckily, like my wife takes me to the iCree classes most weeks. But if I want to get there from where I live, I'm in Humboldt Park. iCree is in the medical district on Roosevelt and Damon. I have to take 2 buses to get there. And where she can get me there in about 12-15 minutes, that bus ride takes closer to about 50.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm going to say Meredith was coming to our rehearsal the other day, and the first bus that came, the lift was broken. Or Robby came to rehearsal one week out in Oak Park, and the elevator at that stop was broken.
So I went down the stairs.
Well, yeah. So he likes to risk his life because he has a strong enough body. Not all of us can roll ourselves down the stairs.
Yeah.
Even if we wanted to risk our lives.
I want to clarify, that's not me saying that's a good thing.
No. But so yes. So I am hoping to call on Ingenuity to maybe hook me up with people so that we can be involved in this way that doesn't involve us being there every week, and that way reach more kids at more schools, things like that.
Yeah, and part of my focus this year is recruiting other disabled teaching artists, or just disabled dancers, period, with Momenta and Reinventability being in both. That's my focus, is getting out there, showing that we're here, recruiting, and then I can just help.
Also, to all of you, you got somebody to refer, or you yourself, we're interested and we will train. So yeah, let us know.
Alrighty. Thank you all so much for your grace and your willingness to answer all of our questions. We just have a couple of little closing announcements, and then we will let you all go. So Ingenuity has some upcoming events. So firstly, our Ingenuity virtual learning platform has just recently released a new course called Afrocentric SEL. It's produced by the Black Teaching Artist Lab in collaboration with Ingenuity, and it's asynchronous, so you can find that on our website and check that out at your own leisure. And our next and last Constellation Institute for this academic year is with Bradley Lathan, and it's Bridging the Gap, Building Better Community for Teaching Artists and Students. So we'll explore a little bit more about what we were just talking about the ways that you can support your teaching artists, make sure that that they're getting what they need so that they can be their best selves for our students. And I would love to have a ton of teaching artists there. So if you work with teaching artists, definitely blast that out to them, because All of these sessions are really conversations with each other. We also, I'm not sure why it's not on here, but we have our Partnerships and Learning survey, which is the survey that we do every year to assess what's happening on the ground, what's the most interesting, where is the most interest in terms of topics for us to learn about. They're often the way that we choose our themes for Constellation. And so it's really, really important to us that everyone who is involved with arts education lets their voice be heard. And we are trying to get at least 100 responses to our Partnerships and Learning survey. And we really want to hear from all of you so that we can continue to make programs that are relevant to what you all need right now. And then speaking of surveys, right here, there is a QR code for our exit survey for this session. And Courtney will also throw the link into the chat for us. We like to try to get at least 75% of attendees to respond to our exit survey so that we know we have a really good idea of how you all were feeling about the work that we did today. And I really encourage you to take that exit survey. It'll take about 3 minutes, and let Robby know how he did, let Ingenuity know how we're doing with these programs so that we can continue to do our best work. And then finally, I just want to say again, thank you so much to Robby for sharing yourself, for doing so much research, and for sharing all of these things with us. And thank you to LaDonna for also sharing your voice and sharing your teaching artist with us. And we will see you next time.
Can I say one more thing?
Oh, yes, please.
The Chicago Inclusive Dance Festival, May 21st. I put the link to the registration in the chat. It'll be a really great day. You can come for a small part or the whole day. And Robby and Maggie and I will be there, and it'll be fun. And that's all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I must go pick up my child. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Robby. It was great.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.